and welcome to For the Love of Nature, a podcast where we tell you everything you need to know about nature, and probably more than you wanted to know. I'm Fawks, Lapole.
And I'm Katy Holloway, and today we're talking about animal research, episode 3. I promise we're eventually going to get into some nature, but the first 3 episodes, we keep talking about animals, but it's what we know.
Right.
It's the best of what we know.
It's the comfort zone.
Right, yeah, comfort zone. Let's start off on the right foot. Something that we hope we won't have too many corrections on, which I'm sure we will. But yeah, starting off in the comfort zone. All right, so this news isn't so much news. It's my own news. My own news. So recently, my own news and my own plug, I guess I should say, for some cool stuff that's happening. So I recently joined the board of directors for the Great Plains Restoration Council, and the reason why I wanted to talk about that is because it's a local northern Texas nonprofit, and they're doing some really, really, really cool stuff.
Cool.
So they were originally in Houston, and they just moved to Fort Worth. And they're working with the Army Corps and the city of Fort Worth, among other groups, to preserve prairies around this area. And not just around Fort Worth, but they're using their voice across the U.S. too for preserving prairie. They're doing partnering with some organizations within Colorado to preserve prairies there, up to speaking a voice for what I talked about last week, but the Arctic Wildlife Nature Refuge. Using their voice there, and so I'm really excited. But I wanted to plug them because it's a really cool organization, and I want people to look them up because I was really excited, and I hope everybody else can get excited about them too. But I like them because they also take a human approach. They have programs like restoration, not incarceration, for kids, and Plains Youth Interaction, which they really focus on more of like a holistic connecting people with nature, which is what we're all about here.
Yeah.
So I'm super excited to join the team, and it's more of like a plug because I'm sure I'm going to be talking about it the more I get into it with them. So more of maybe not a plug as much as of a warning that you guys are going to soon know more than what you ever wanted to know about prairies. Because I'm really excited. They just secured a bunch of land, here outside of Fort Worth. I mean, it really is some of the last native prairies of this particular type of prairies in the area. And anyone that's familiar with the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex area, it's insanely developing fast down here. And so preserving any sort of, it really is an endangered landscape, an endangered ecosystem. And so having a voice in helping preserve that is really cool and helping them bring their mission forward. So I'm really excited. And again, more of a warning because I'm sure I'm going to be talking more and more about them as I get into it. So
well, congrats.
Yeah, thanks. And definitely check them out. You can check it's the Great Plains Restoration Council. It's gprc.org. So check out what they're doing. And hopefully you'll find it as interesting as I do.
Very cool. Well, my nature news is much more lighthearted. It's really not news either. A little bit, but
anything is news to us if I don't know about it. It's news.
Yeah, that's true. So in entomology today, entomology, for those of you that don't know, is the study of insects, and arachnids and things like that. In the last few days, they have discovered a new species of recluse spider. Some people here in the United States probably know about brown recluses, but just recluse spiders in general. They're one of the most well-known groups of spiders to the public because they've got necrotic or like decomposing venom.
So it's so gross. If you've never seen a picture, I don't want to post it because then we'll be like censored, on our social media, or you gotta click to see it. It's pretty gross. If you've never, it's rotting.
Yeah. And they're all over the world. It's not just here in the U.S.
Yeah,
but the latest
gross.
one that they just discovered has been named after Leonard Cohen, which, if you don't know, he is a Canadian singer, songwriter, poet, and novelist.
Why?
I don't know.
They just did?
I guess the person just really liked Leonard Cohen. The scientist who discovered him, he says that he wanted he listened to a lot of Cohen's music since he was young, and especially in recent years. And it kind of was just like a memorial to him. Yeah.
Well,
he says that he likens Cohen's music to the venom of recluse spiders. It doesn't affect everyone, but those who are affected by it carry a scar for the rest of their lives. That's amazing.
That's an awesome quote.
Yeah.
And that's what I was going to say. I was like, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but I think that quote, I think it sums it up.
Yeah, a little bit of both, and definitely something only an entomologist would say.
Right? I feel like what are those videos? Is it Story of a Zookeeper or Tales of a Zookeeper?
I'm
that
not
like
sure.
super stereotype the different keepers, you know what I mean? I mean, we'll have to find it. We'll maybe have it for the next episode, but it's a series of like short videos, because if you're in like the animal care world, there are like certain stereotypes for certain people. Like when you go to like say like a zoo conference, you can pick out easily like who are the bird people, who are the reptile people, who are the entomologists. Like
Yep.
pick them out of a crowd so easily. It's definitely funny, but
Yeah. So on that lighthearted note, I'll go into my first crazy animal research topic. So I kind of wanted to focus, you'll see a theme here across both of my critters.
good.
But,
I like themes.
Me too. And it wasn't even intentional, which is the best part. But I wanted to kind of focus on some amazing things that we found through animal research that have also, like, helped humans or are going to help humans, which I think is kind of cool. Okay, so first one is silk spinning goats. Have you heard of them?
Wait. What?
I'm so glad you haven't, because I'd heard of them before, but I didn't.
Spinning goats.
Oh yeah. Here we go. Okay.
Like a goat, like the goats we would use to make our goat's milk soap. Goats.
Correct. Goats.
Okay.
Farmyard
I'm
goats.
so excited for this.
Yeah. So in 2010 is when this kind of got started. Randy Lewis, a molecular biologist from the University of Wyoming, really wanted to. I would love to meet this man because I kind of want to know how he came up with the idea. But he figured out a way to incorporate spider silk producing genes into goats.
What?
Yeah. So he spliced some genes together, which sounds really scary, but the effects are only this. So does it mean that the goats could shoot spider silk out of their butts? Out of their udders? No. The spiders.
I wish it was out of their udders.
Me too. So much. But the spider silk in general is made out of a really unique protein that makes it super strong.
Mm-hmm.
And so when that gene is put into goats' genes, it would result in that protein being available in their milk. So then they can milk the goat and then like purify the milk until it's just that protein and then turn that into the material they want.
Okay, because I was like, really strong milk? Like,
yeah. Ew, stringy milk. Yeah, no, it's just like a whole bunch of proteins in it. So he was doing this research by like splicing genes, I guess, into a parent, and the babies were born with this.
Crazy.
So the gene was only found in 3 out of the 7 goats that were genetically modified. So it's definitely not like a foolproof way, but it worked.
Weird. Yeah.
So why? Why would he do this? Well, spider silk is both incredibly strong and also incredibly elastic. It's stronger than steel on a per millimeter basis, which is insane to think about.
Yeah, that is
to me.
insane.
Like, I mean, obviously we can break spider webs, but if we were the size of spider web, or if we were the size of spiders,
no, that would be crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's also resistant to temperature changes, which is metal is not,
Yeah.
like heat affects metals. So It's a really different material, flexible, strong, and temperature resistant. It makes it perfect for things like bulletproof vests and being used in medical procedures for like stitching things, and
Crazy.
like being inside the body. So harvesting silk from spiders, because, obviously you think, well, let's just get it straight from the spider.
Yeah.
That's super hard since they're so small and they produce so little silk.
This goes back to our scorpion milking.
Yeah,
it's like along the same lines. It's like it's extremely difficult. You have to make a contraption to do it.
Well,
I
just imagine these poor little spider sweat farms where they're just spinning all day long.
All day long.
In terrible
I've been
conditions.
Spinning for 28 hours and I haven't had a break. Poor spinning spiders.
Yeah. But not only is it just impractical because of size, also spiders don't like being on farms together. They end up eating each other.
True.
So,
very true.
Yeah. So to kind of get these numbers in your head to produce at the rate that we would need it to produce an 11x4 piece of textile from a golden orb silk spider. So the silk that they're using is from golden orb spiders.
Okay.
If you wanted to make an 11x4 piece of cloth, it would require 1 million spiders.
Oh my gosh.
70 workers to get that stuff, and 4 consecutive years of silk collection.
And I can't believe what I'm about to say next, but how many goats does it take?
Yeah. Apparently having goats produce the protein is much more practical. I guess because you can just milk so many more goats faster. Yeah. And they just produce more.
It produces more. I guess if it produces, I wonder how much of the milk, how much of protein, I guess I should say. I
agree. I wonder too. I couldn't find the number anywhere. So that all brings us to today. So though this, why have we not heard about silk spinning goats? Because that's pretty freaking cool. The technology hasn't completely taken off. It's still sort of being refined and what they're going to use it for.
They got to sort through the goats that are born with 4 eyeballs and
right. No, a lot of people were like, "Are the goats any different?" Literally, the only thing different is that they produce that protein. Yeah. At least so far.
Yeah. Yeah, let's put that warning out there. At least so far.
Yeah. So the process is still being refined, and it is being used to some degree. An interesting thing that I found is that the Navy really wants it because they have.
Can you picture a bunch of Navy guys out there milking some goats? What are you guys gonna do for this? Gotta get my stuff. Gotta get that silk.
Yep, and they want it because they're imagining how they could stop enemy ships' propellers by basically having giant spiderweb nets.
That's crazy.
That would be strong enough.
That's comic book stuff right there.
Right,
that's
right.
Straight up comic book stuff.
I know. We'll stop our propeller using a spider web, but not just any spider web. Yeah.
A goat spider web.
Yeah. So they tried it with goats, but since then they've also genetically engineered silkworms to do it, bacteria to make it, and also alfalfa.
Interesting.
Apparently, alfalfa already has a ton of proteins in it, so it can produce the proteins. And of course, farming alfalfa would be probably the easiest way to get it all.
Yeah, I would say alfalfa, but the bacteria method too.
Yeah,
I mean.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because bacteria can go and go and go and go. You know what I mean? They don't need to sleep necessarily, so it's almost like a set it and forget it kind of mechanism. Because if they're producing it, so I'd assume it'd be like bacteria vomiting.
Right, me too.
That's protein. You know what I mean? So they just profusely vomit everywhere, producing this silk. Interesting.
Yep. That they can make into bulletproof vests and save us. They actually could make it that led me down a rabbit hole to could you make bulletproof skin? And the answer is yes. They actually have made bulletproof skin.
What?
Yeah. However, it doesn't will it stop a bullet? Kind of. But that doesn't stop your organs from being impacted by the bullet.
Yeah, because
Like, you won't have a hole, but you will have internal bleeding. Like,
yeah, because I mean that's the same thing with a vest. Well, not the same thing, but I mean when you get hit with a bulletproof vest, you still feel it. I mean it still is going to leave a mark.
Right, or break your ribs. Yeah.
Yeah. Dang.
Yeah. So, spinning goats. They silk spinning goats.
Spinning goats, which is also needs to be a topic we come up with. Spinning goats.
Hopefully, we'll hear more about them in future.
Yeah, crazy. I'm always very cautious when people start altering genes, genetics, and stuff like that. But I mean, if they can do it ethically and it can serve a good purpose, I mean, it's really interesting. That's how I feel too. It'd be cool to see where that ends up then. Alrighty. So are you ready for mine now?
Yeah.
All right. So first up on my insane animal research projects, aka I can't believe someone funded these and I couldn't even get a school scholarship with mediocre grades, is staring at seagulls makes them less likely to steal your food. Yes. Yep, you heard me. So they studied staring at seagulls makes them less likely to steal your food.
I mean, duh.
Well, but they studied it. All right, so a little disclaimer first. There's a lot of debate in the bird world about the name seagull versus gull.
Oh, brother.
Right? The argument comes from the point that not all of these birds live near the sea, so therefore they should be called gulls. So to avoid any angry flock of birders coming our way, we're just going to call them gulls, even though the research calls them seagulls. So, little disclaimer. All right, so there are approximately 50 species of gulls found around the world. If you're trying to identify the different species of gulls,
good luck.
Take it from me, just don't. Don't.
Yeah.
They're worse than warblers. They're just horrible to identify. Some of them are pretty easy and stand out, but yeah, they're horrible species to try to identify. They're scavengers, which makes them easily adaptable to urban environments. And I wouldn't call them flighted possums, but I would say they're pretty close.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, a flighted possum in itself is pretty entertaining. But, so they range in size from 11...
I would argue maybe a flying raccoon, because they are pretty smart, too.
They are.
Not that possums aren't, but... When I think of clever, it's not usually a possum. It's usually a raccoon.
I think that makes it better than if it flew, a flying possum. Because
That's true.
I picture if a possum was flying, it would hands down fly into walls, fly into buildings, because I imagine their wings would go faster than their brains can work. So it has to be just a horrible plot of these poor possums. So maybe between a raccoon and a possum, it's still a bird. So I don't know if I would go as far as comparing it to a raccoon, because raccoons are incredibly smart. All right, so they range in size from 11 to 32 inches with distinctive white and gray coloring. I say distinctive white and gray, but it really all looks the same. Let's see here. And most of the birds can live more than 20 years, which is something a lot of people don't know, is that birds live an awfully long time. Even in the wild, they are so old. So even if you don't live near water, chances are you've seen gulls near parking lots, pretty far inland. They're used to people, which brings us to our study. All right, so a group of scientists from the University of Exeter, Exeter, in the UK in 2019, so very recently, studied gulls and the most effective way to keep them from stealing your food.
Okay, let's be real. They just wanted to get paid to go to the beach.
Right.
That's what this all was about.
Right. So researchers studied 74 different gulls, which first of all, I can't tell the different species apart, let alone telling the different gulls. So I don't know.
Maybe they're banded.
Yeah, I don't know if they had them all. They only studied banded galls versus unbanded galls. And whenever we say that, for those that don't know, a lot of times whenever you're doing research, you catch them up and you put a little band around their little leggies, different colors, different letterings and numbers on them so you can identify them. So it's totally harmless. It's loose enough that, it doesn't get caught up on stuff. So anyway, so they studied 74. Out of the 74 galls, only 27 approached the food, and 19 completed the both looking at and looking away tests.
That's actually really surprising. I have never met a gull that didn't want to eat my food.
Right. Right? So most of the studies focus just on these 19 galls. The lead author of the study, Madeline Gumas, said galls are often seen as aggressive and willing to take food from humans. So it was interesting to find that most wouldn't even come near our tests. Of those that did approach, she said, most took longer when they were being watched, which I found pretty interesting because, okay, so Laura and I, again, we both grew up in PA. And so our go-to vacationing spot was around Ocean City, Maryland area. And
further south.
Yes. Yeah,
I went to Chincoteague and Assateague, yeah.
Yep. And so that whole little area, just north, because what's right north of it? It's Delaware Beach and Rehoboth and...
Yeah.
And that's the hot spot for anybody in PA to spend their summers. And that is gall heaven when it comes to the French fry thieves.
Oh, yeah. And
so,
ice cream, anything.
Right? And yeah, any food. And I just picture, again, what you said before, how I couldn't get a decent scholarship for school, but somebody got paid. I would have been paid to sit outside of Thrasher's on the boardwalk to do this. I totally would have. Because if you've ever been to the boardwalk at Ocean City, or really, like Laura said, any boardwalk at any beach, there's nothing short of thousands upon thousands of these galls.
Oh yeah, and they will take your food. Maybe just UK gulls are more polite than US gulls.
I don't know, man. Or we're not looking at them hard enough. So we weren't staring at them hard enough. So there were variances within approach times of galls, but on average, they found that galls that were stared at took approximately 21 seconds longer to grab the food. They didn't examine.
They thought about it. They thought about it first.
They didn't examine why the galls have different reactions, but they feel it has to do with their past positive experiences, positive reinforcement, basically. People do purposely feed galls, which PSA, don't feed animals ever. It's a bad idea. Just don't. They learn quickly, even galls, so it doesn't take them long to figure out that people equal food and that they can get it. So basically the method of research though of this, because I imagine, and again, this was behind a paywall, so I couldn't read the ins and outs, but I read several different articles on it and stuff. I just imagine somebody sitting there outside of Thrasher's. And for anybody that doesn't know, Thrasher's is the French fry place of Ocean City. Dude, if somebody is going to sponsor us, it needs
Thrashers.
It needs to be Thrashers. You have to overnight mail them to Texas, and
I'm close. I'm not that far away. You don't have to overnight it to me.
Yeah, right. Yeah, all the French fries will go to you. But I just imagine, because I read one article that was pretty comical that was talking about because clearly they didn't read the methods very closely. Because I picture. The article was talking about, did they sit up and stare at these galls? Did they get down on the boardwalk and stare at them eye to eye? What was the method of staring? But so in conclusion, if you're on a boardwalk in a parking lot, wherever, where galls are congregating and they have a fancy for your food, stare them down. They're less likely to take it. Which also, I will say, even though they said that they're less likely to take it, it only takes them 21 seconds longer to then take it.
It's a pause. They're like, should I? Yes.
Yeah, because they're still galls and they're still going to take your food. So that is the end of my first one of if you stare at galls long enough, They're less likely to steal your food.
That reminds me of a gull story of my own.
Oh, please share.
So I grew up going to Chincoteague almost every summer, and they have laughing gulls there.
Which if nobody knows where Chincoteague is, Chincoteague clearly did not grow up in the 90s and read
right.
the horse books.
Misty of Chincoteague, yeah.
But they have wild horses there, and that's kind of like their big draw. Beautiful area, beautiful islands. Visit there. PSA for their visitor, bureau there. Really cool place.
Yeah, like if you want to go to the beach, but you don't want it to be touristy, instead you want it to be like wildlife, go there.
Yeah, 100%.
But they got the laughing gulls, and I have a special place in my heart for them. I just think they're so funny. Like, I can see their little brains working of how they're going to get the food. Like, I watch them watch people's, like, picnic baskets on the beach, and, like, I like, watch them figure out how they're going to get it. And so when I was younger, there was this one gull that was just hanging out by us. And, yes, I know you're not supposed to feed gulls, but I was younger.
Laura.
I was young. These are my younger days. I also say don't feed gulls because you're really just making everyone miserable because they're all going to come. But I had a couple of Doritos nearby, and I started, like, throwing little pieces to this seagull because it could say my name. So I was positively reinforcing it to say my name. Every time I'd throw it a Dorito, it would go, Lara! Lara! And I was like, oh my gosh.
You thought, it knows me. It connected.
Yeah, so, like, I just have to keep training it to say my name, and then we'll be best friends, and then it can come home with me. I don't have a pet seagull.
It's not a crow.
I wanted it like crow, though. Like, I wanted a smart, sassy seagull. Like, I wanted to be that unique person with, instead of a parrot on your shoulder, I want a seagull.
A gull. Yeah. Right. Forget the crows. Any COVIDs are, too smart.
Give me a laughing gull.
Goodness. We should totally do an episode. At some point, we need to bring up crows again.
Oh, yeah.
For an episode, because they are incredibly intelligent, and people train them for, wild crows to do remarkable things. At some point, we'll have to circle back up on a
Corvid episode.
Yes. Super, super interesting.
All right. Well, that leads me to my next one, which I'm kind of going on a farm animal theme here. So my next one is cows that produce less methane.
Interesting.
Less smelly cows.
Yeah, less fart power. All right, let's go.
All right. So here's the problem. The problem is that ruminants, which are animals like cows, sheep, goats, those guys, they have a 4-chambered stomach. Which that's not the problem. It's what happens because of it.
The problem is they have 4 stomachs. Wait, what?
Yeah, no. They have a 4-chambered stomach, and digestion takes a really long time since they're pretty much just eating grass and woody plants. One of their stomachs, the rumen, contains tons of microbes that break down the food, and as a byproduct, they produce methane gas, which is, smelly. And, this gas is mainly burped out, like by far burped.
Yes.
But some of it is also farted, or as I grew up saying, tooted.
Tooted. For our young listeners, the tooted.
Yeah. So the average ruminant produces anywhere from 66 to 132 gallons of methane per day.
That is insane. And this is why we have climate change.
Right. Literally, livestock are estimated to create up to 14% of human-induced greenhouse emissions, specifically methane. Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. A little goat is producing 66 gallons of methane. And most, by far, from burping. So human-induced greenhouse emissions, for those of you that don't know, are things that go into the atmosphere that contribute to making the atmosphere warmer, like global warming. So there's natural reasons, and then there is human-induced greenhouse emissions. And human-induced could be things like cars, but it could also be our raising of livestock.
Barking goats.
Right. Can scientists find a way for cows to produce less methane? So that's the problem, and the answer is yes, they could. And there are several solutions that they've come up with. So Stephen Moore, an agricultural research scientist from the University of Alberta, in 2009, he figured that there might be 2 ways to tackle this problem. First, you could look at the food the cows eat and maybe change that, or you could look at the cows themselves. So by measuring the amount of methane that different cows were producing, and the ways that they measure this is so funny. Most of it seems like now they have this, like a feed trough that when the cow puts its head in, it like measures how much methane it's coming out of its mouth.
Interesting.
Because it's always burping.
Yeah. Jeez.
But, so they, by measuring that methane, and they could selectively breed cattle that after a while, they ended up with cattle that produced 25% less methane.
What?
Just from selective breeding. Yeah.
What? That's crazy.
So that seemed to indicate that genes have a lot to do with it.
Yeah.
So that means that, their genes are affecting what microbes are in their gut, and the microbes are the ones producing the methane. So he and lots of other scientists are also trying the feed method by tweaking like what they're feeding them. Like they found that like feeding them seaweed makes them produce less methane, and just different, like more grain, basically less green stuff, which is what a cow should be eating, but whatever. Yeah,
that's what I was just going to say, because most of what cows eat now, and that's part of the problem too, is corn. Right. And and that's not necessarily, it's not healthy for them as far as like producing good meat, but then it also like most of the corn that we grow goes towards feeding the livestock, and so it just, and the cycle just goes on from there. So yeah, I mean, if they could figure out something else to feed them, I mean, that'd be huge. I mean, I'm pretty much vegetarian. I mean, I eat very, very, very little meat. Anyway, and it's not for this reason solely. Most of it's just because I feel better when I don't eat meat. But yeah, cows, livestock, they do a lot of damage that most people don't know that they're doing, because you can't see it. It's not like they're, habitat destruction or anything like that. They're burping. So.
Yeah, they're burping and it's killing us. So that was
burping and it's killing us.
That's one way it was approached. The Canada Genome Project. So the Genome Project has been a thing for a long time.
Oh yeah,
they've been trying to map. So Canada was doing its own thing. And so they had a man named Filippo Migliore at the University of, I'll butcher this name. I think it's Guelph, Guelph.
Okay.
And Paul Stothard at the University of Alberta. They began sequencing the genomes of cattle that produced less methane, kind of like the last guy.
Okay.
And so they're looking at which genes are specifically responsible. So they also did this
for burpier cows.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So they did the selective breeding thing as well. But they took it even further, so they looked at 80 traits, one of which was methane production. But they also were looking at which cows didn't require so much food and which cows were healthier and blah, blah, blah. Because their goal is basically to find the best genes for the healthiest, best cow.
Yeah. Because, I mean, realistically, I mean, it's not just like, let's have a, less burpy cow, but it's also, I'm sure they took into factors like meat, like quality of meat, so that they're still useful. And
right, a lot of
we're using them for.
Honestly, a lot of it has to do with like money. Like they want cows that they don't have to spend so much money on for healthcare and feed.
Yeah.
So if you have a healthier cow, it's better for everybody. So then their plan is that they can send bull semen all over the world, and so you don't have to selectively breed cows yourself.
Yeah.
You can just order some like super cow semen. And,
I mean, they kind of already do that. I mean,
Sure.
You pick your best bulls, you are, artificially inseminate it. So, I mean, to an extent, like it's not like that far-fetched of a thing to do. It really isn't. Like if you can identify, and selectively breed and then get like that prime male, it's really not that far-fetched.
Oh yeah. And so they're also thinking like that opens up doors to like equitable farm. Like because a farmer might not have enough money to buy a perfect cow, but they might have enough money to buy the perfect cow semen and make their own. You know what I mean?
True. Yeah.
It's just it might so that leads me to the last thing I wanted to talk about, which is Ag Research, which is a New Zealand based place. And I believe her name is Sinead Leahy, but again, I'm probably totally butchering that first name. I'm so sorry.
We should just put out like a permanent disclaimer at the beginning of every episode. Right after our intro, we're going to say, and we're probably going to butcher every name we say, and we apologize ahead of time. We are
best. super American, and I'm so sorry. So she found that most of the methane comes from 3% of the microbes in a cow's stomach. So the rest of them aren't really doing the methane thing. Those 3% are all anaerobic microbes, meaning they don't need oxygen. And that's why they're producing the methane. So
makes sense, yeah.
She sequenced the genes of those microbes, those species that produce the methane, and then created a vaccine against them. So
crazy.
Yeah. So the vaccine that she made can target multiple ones at a time, so they can like make different vaccines. Does this one help? Does this one help? Does this one help? And at first that seems like really sketch to me, but it actually stimulates something in a cow that's already there. So in a cow's saliva, they already have an antibody against these microbes. And I guess normally their body just regulates it on its own. But with the vaccine, it just stimulates that antibody. So it's killing more of those microbes, making it produce less methane. So scientists in general, scientists all over the world are working on this problem, not only to help with like greenhouse gas emissions, which of course helps with global warming, but also to create healthier cows and help farmers to get the most bang for their buck.
Literally, sometimes.
Yeah. Yep.
Literally.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That is crazy.
Yeah. This one had if you are interested in this topic, there is so much information on this topic because so many people are researching it, including Penn State.
I believe it, yeah.
Because they're big into ag. So
yeah, huge into ag. Huge ag.
If you're into agricultural research at all, check out cows that produce less methane.
Yeah, and that really is because, like, you know, I've made this step. Again, you know, I'm mostly vegetarian, and just because it makes me feel better when I eat less meat. I don't have, like, a medical condition or anything that, you know, that would prevent me from eating meat, but because I know there are things out there like, you know, PKU, and there are some conditions where your body can't break down meat, but, like, I feel better when I don't, but the methane produced from cows is a huge issue. I mean, a huge issue. And I know, what was Al Gore's movie, that documentary that came out?
Inconvenient Truth.
Inconvenient Truth, yeah. That came out, and I think they touched on it there. I mean, it's talked about in a lot of different documentaries, the problem.
Well, and it's not, I mean, it's so, too, like, the methane is one thing, but also, like, the amount of resources needed to even raise livestock, the amount of water, the amount of food,
It's not sustainable.
No, not at all. And then they think that in the next couple of decades, it will be beyond sustainability. So, although I'm not a vegetarian either, I definitely think about what type of meats and how often am I getting them.
Yeah.
Because, I mean,
they say even cut down. And it's not like, you know, if you eat vegetarian, you know, you're just munching on lettuce all the time. You know, because there are a lot of, like, and really the more I've eaten less meat and gone to full vegetarian, the more I've explored various cuisine from around the world, because most other cultures eat very little meat just because of availability, because of the cost behind it.
Refrigeration.
Refrigeration. I mean, the U.S., you know, and how much meat we eat, it's definitely a cultural thing for sure. And I mean, I live in Texas, so that is like one of like the meat capital. I mean,
and we come from Pennsylvania, which is like dairy
farming.
Central.
Yeah, dairy farming. Yeah. So it is a huge issue that I do hope they find, because I mean, my choice is, you know, to not eat a lot of meat at all, but I mean, and I recognize that's not everybody, so hopefully they find a fix for this. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, because I think it'd be a great balance, you know, like...
Exactly.
I know some farmers, including, like, meat farmers, and as, you know, there's a lot of sustainable... I'm all for, like, sustainable farming, and, I mean, yeah, if they can raise cows sustainably and that produce less methane...
Go for it. Yeah, it would be the best thing for everyone. All right. So my second animal, you definitely picked I don't know, more in-depth research where I feel like I just found the dumbest research.
No, I love it. I love that you said that your titles are like, I can't believe you got money for this.
Yeah, exactly. So that's definitely this next one. All right. So my next one is also about birds, and I promise I'm not obsessed with birds. They just keep coming up. So to end our episode of nature research is a study by the Oregon Health and Science University, which studied if you can get birds drunk and will it slur their songs.
What? That's amazing.
Right?
Okay, because I know you can get birds drunk, but the slurring of the songs is freaking fantastic. What an amazing idea.
Right?
I'm so ready for this.
So the study was done in 2014, I believe it was, and they wanted to see the effect that alcohol had on birds. And so like Laura said, like in nature, drunk animals happen a lot. And it's because they eat fermented fruits. Fruits that are dying, rotting, they ferment, boom, eat it, drunk.
Cedar waxwings, my spirit bird.
Right, right, yeah. Known alcoholics, cedar waxwings. Elephants. Let's see, your dolphins get high off of pufferfish. There's all kind.
We'll probably do an episode later on.
We totally should. Yeah. Totally should. So for this one that they studied, the prime subject was finches. So quoting Christopher Olson, one of the researchers, he said, "We just showed up in the morning and mixed a little bit of juice with 6% alcohol and put it in their water bottles and put it in the cages." At first we were thinking they wouldn't drink on their own because, a lot of animals won't touch this stuff. But they seem to tolerate it pretty well and be somewhat willing to consume it.
Somewhat willing?
Right?
That sounds so wrong. Like, I already know that people who are listening are thinking, wow, this seems incredibly unethical. And then when you say something like, they seem rather willing, like, that just sounds...
rather willing. So, in the bottles that they used were like the rabbit botters. You know what I mean?
I can totally picture it.
So it's like the ones... Yeah, the lick it bottles. So they gotta lick it. And they're getting drunk. So that sounds hilarious. So a little hesitant at first, but before you know it, they have a bunch of drunk finches with horrible livers.
Oh, poor little finches.
Right? So they let the finches drink until their blood alcohol levels reach between 0.05 to 0.08, which is the legal limit for humans.
Okay, so at least they didn't, go crazy with that.
No. I mean, just enough that these finches couldn't drive home from a party, essentially. So again, I didn't grab the actual paper. I feel like we got to start buying a subscription to EBSCOhost or something.
Chain store?
to actually look at the real papers. But I'm extremely interested to figure out how they figured out the blood alcohol level in finches because I'm sure they just drew blood. But for 1 second, I was really hoping that they had tiny breathalyzers.
Yes.
And it was some poor, grad students surrounded by a bunch of drunk singing finches trying to take their blood alcohol levels.
They're trying to make them do the sobriety test and walk a little straight line.
With their tiny little feet. All right, Finch, you are drunk enough to sing. Now sing. So once their alcohol levels reached the peak, they would then record the songs, which I also think it's super adorable. Picturing a drunk, a finch, and it's drunk, because everybody reacts to alcohol differently. I, as you can imagine, get hyper. All right. My husband, my sweet husband, depending on what it is, he generally gets tired. So he gets so mellowed out, he could fall asleep, where I have the complete opposite effect and get hyper. So it's also super cute to think these drunk little finches, that what they do when they're drunk is they sing.
That's a totally normal human thing to do. Imagine all the shanties, all the drunk shanties, and
It is. It definitely is. So
Drunken karaoke.
right. Finch karaoke.
Gosh, that's cute.
So, not surprisingly, when you listen to the audio, you'll be able to hear Finch's song get a bit quieter and just sound a little bit more slurred, or as Olson puts it, a bit less organized in their sound production, like a roommate calling from a bar to get a ride home. So,
yeah, because like slurred, I feel like you have to have lips to slur, right?
Do you need lips to slur?
I don't know. Like, maybe it's just your tongue. But I'm just picturing like when a bird sings, how it all works. Like, could you slur whistling?
Yeah.
Or is it just nonsensical whistling?
We'll have to find some of the audio and see if we can play it. Yeah, to see, because I would imagine if he says it sounds like a roommate calling from a bar to get a ride home. You know what I mean? Because I'm sure, okay, if anybody's of age here, I'm sure you have gotten or you have dealt with this. My biggest experience is whenever we were out with a bunch of researchers, coincidentally enough, in Australia again. And everything happens in Australia. And we had some students there that weren't big drinkers, but they decided there, and getting them home was hilarious. I mean, again, you know, they actually sent a shuttle for us so we could all get home safe. But anybody that has ever dealt with somebody that's drunk, it's slow motion. You know, like everything is slow motion. So I just picture slow motion finches. So, you know, birds largely sing for territory acknowledgement. But I was curious, like, what do drunk birds sing about? Like, is it just like, is it like, excuse me, but this is my branch and you're gonna need to move. You know, like, is it?
Yeah. Like aggressive singing, like some people get, you know, mean drunk. Or is it just like totally raucous bar singing?
Because like I said, I'm hyper. When I have had a lot of alcohol, I get hyper. Like, I'm hyper. Total opposite of my husband, who would rather curl up in bed and just go to sleep.
Yeah.
Like, totally night and day. So, of course, they can't, you know, understand what birds are singing necessarily, but I feel like there's more research that could be done with this of, you know, what studying the mating calls versus territorial, and then when they are drunk, what in fact are they singing about? So I still have a lot of questions.
Yeah, for sure. And it actually reminds me, did you ever as a kid, I'm going to bring a throwback movie here, and you may have never seen it. Do you ever watch the movie Willie the Sparrow?
Oh, no.
Okay,
no,
it's a cartoon. It's a cartoon movie from 1989.
Okay.
Made in Hungary, but it was in English when I saw it.
I was like, what?
I don't know. It was on TV. I've seen it a couple times. It's an animated film of a little boy who gets turned into a sparrow because I think he was being mean to them. So then he learns, you know, sparrows are great. But in the movie, his like old mentor sparrow gets wasted and starts like slurring because, you know, he's talking like a person. Yeah. But as a kid, I will never forget seeing this old drunk sparrow. And now I can totally see drunk finches because I've seen it before.
You have seen it. I'll have to look that up. The English version, not the Hungarian.
Yeah, Willie the Sparrow.
Willie the Sparrow. I will have to look it up. So, in conclusion, yes, 1, birds can get drunk. 2, they do in fact slur their songs when they sing. I am just more curious about what they sing about when they are drunk. So, that concludes Laura's intellectual research report. And my, what the heck do people get paid for research reports?
I love it.
It's definitely interesting. And there's way more out there about just insane research. I'm sure we could hit on this topic a couple different times and circle back to it.
Definitely.
If we want to. Alrighty. So as always, make sure you guys check us out. I don't think they took any pictures of the drunk finches slurring, but we'll find something to post on our Instagram.
I'm sure the goats are famous.
Say again?
I'm sure the goats are famous, the silk spinning goats.
Oh, goodness,
yes. Gotta be pictures of them.
Yes. I because again, I also picture, if it's not coming from their udders, I picture them like crocheting with it.
Oh my gosh.
You know what I mean? So are they the ones that are making the bulletproof vest? Like just sitting there crocheting it. So check us out at For the Love of Nature, FTLON podcast on both Instagram and Twitter. And we will see you guys next week.
Join us next week.